Hi folks, how you doing? It's James JT at the movies, and we're back for episode 11 of my Debriefing 007 series, where we're going to take a look at 1979's Moonraker. So at the end of the last film, the end of The Spy Who Loved Me, as was tradition in the 60s and 70s Bond films, the closing credits finished up with James Bond will return, and it said James Bond will return in For Your Eyes Only. But here we are talking about Moonraker. Well, what happened? I can tell you exactly what happened. This film came out and was an absolute box office sensation, and inspired so many different films across all the different genres in the late 80s. And of course, Bond, doing what it always does and taking inspiration from the cinema hits of the day, decided that they wanted to have their own 007 space adventure. How could they do that? Well, they could use the title and elements of the novel Moonraker. So this really doesn't bear much resemblance to the novel of Moonraker, which is actually my favourite Fleming novel. Really, the fact that Hugo Drax is the villain and that he's a successful businessman who's up to no good is about where the similarities end, really. But the basic plot of this film is largely the same as the last film, to be fair, just with a different bad guy and a different obsession, if you like. So the last film had Stromberg as the villain, and he had this sort of underwater obsession and wanted to recreate the city of Atlantis and destroy the surface world so that everyone would have to live underwater with him and his sort of weird and wonderful fantasy with that. And then with this one, Hugo Drax wants to eliminate most of humanity and then rebuild it in his own image with men and women that he's selected to repopulate the planet. And I suppose it's one of them, really, isn't it, where it's just a cut and paste Bond story, and parts of it work, parts of it don't, really. But yeah, so the plot of this film is that the Moonraker shuttle, which we see in the sort of the opening scenes of the film, mysteriously disappears. We see it being hijacked, but obviously MI6 don't know that. It mysteriously disappears, and then the plane that's carrying it explodes, and there's no trace of Moonraker in the wreckage. And because Moonraker was in the care of the British government, Bond is then sent over to California to meet with Hugo Drax, the leader of Drax Industries, who owned the Moonraker shuttle, to investigate what's gone on further. Drax goes, "Oh, I see you've come to apologise," and Bond gives the whole, "Well, I'll apologise when we know what's going on." Bond manages to sort of seduce one of Drax's assistants and learns that there definitely are some top secret plans going on, and that Drax knows more than he's letting on. Another one of Drax's assistants, who's one of the film's henchmen, tries to kill Bond whilst he's having an interaction with Dr. Holly Goodhead, who's this film's leading lady. She puts him in a G-force machine that the astronauts use to get used to the sort of the sensation and the feeling of sort of being in a rocket. And this guy turns the machine all the way up to 11 and leaves Bond in it to die, whilst Dr. Goodhead's off and doing whatever it is that she's doing. Bond realises that he's got all the information that he can get from Drax's California site, and bids everyone there farewell. And unfortunately, the young lady that had aided Bond into finding out what was going on is killed by Drax in a really sinister scene. Actually, it really feels out of left field in this movie. She's sort of like relieved of her employment, and then Drax sets these big horrible dogs on her, and you don't see what's happened. It's left to your imagination, thankfully, but it's a really dark scene for quite a light movie. So the trail of the investigation leads Bond over to Venice, where he finds that Drax has a laboratory where they're developing a deadly gas, and Bond really can't quite sort of put two and two together and doesn't understand what's going on. So in a rare occurrence for Bond, he sort of pushes the panic button and has the place shut down and quarantined and brings all the MI6 superiors out there. And then when they go into the building where the lab should be, it's not there, and we just find Hugo Drax in his study. After the embarrassing scene where Drax pleads ignorance, Bond's scolded by the Minister of Defence and insists that M take 007 off the case. M explains that officially he'll have to do what the minister recommends, but does want Bond to continue working the case. Bond slyly lets M know that he's going to go to Rio de Janeiro to investigate the case further. Whilst he's also been in Venice, Bond also tracks down Dr. Holly Goodhead, who just so happens to be there supposedly to deliver a speech, but it actually turns out that she's working for the CIA and she's also investigating Drax from their end. The pair of them agree to work together, but much in the same vein as The Spy Who Loved Me, they don't really trust each other, and she ultimately ends up sort of double-crossing Bond and sort of leaves him in Venice anyway. Bond's not really too bothered about this and sets off to Rio anyway. Once in Rio, Bond meets up with a fellow agent, Manuela, who's able to show him some of the Drax organisation properties over there, and Bond's able to try and again put a bit more of the pieces in the puzzle together and work out what's going on. Again, he teams up with Dr. Holly Goodhead, and it's at this point that we're reintroduced to Jaws, who's been brought in by Drax to take care of Bond and Goodhead. And Jaws in this film is completely laughable. They've taken everything away from him that was completely menacing and just made him this sort of like buffoon character, and it really, really is a shame, because I think he was great in the previous film. And don't get me wrong, I do enjoy Moonraker. I do have a lot of fun with it, and it's one of the ones that I can just pop on and watch it and have absolutely a great time with it without needing to think about it. But there are some problems with it, I do feel. So after they get away from Jaws, Bond and Goodhead are very quickly captured by some of Drax's goons. Again, Bond manages to quickly escape, but unfortunately, Dr. Goodhead doesn't. Bond decides that he's going to head back to the MI6 headquarters in Rio de Janeiro, and it's there that he meets up with Q and with M, and Q explains that he's done tests on a sample of the gas that Bond managed to salvage from the lab before Drax made it mysteriously disappear. And Q then confirms just how lethal the gas is, and M says that Bond better get to work quick. They find out that the gas is actually derived from a plant that's growing in the Amazon rainforest, so of course Bond goes to investigate. He has another interaction with Jaws, which is just completely comedic. Jaws ends up going over a waterfall in a boat, and it's like something out of Scooby-Doo. When he's going over the waterfall, he's like, ah, sort of a thing, and I don't know, it's just like, it takes you out of the moment for me. Like, you know, he's not that laughable in The Spy Who Loved Me, but in this one he really has some daft moments. Bond manages to find Drax's lair, which seems to be an old temple in the jungle, but it now has the facilities to launch rockets into space and has all the mod cons. There's loads of beautiful ladies that Bond recognises as the astronauts training from Drax's program earlier in the film there, and they end up sort of lulling Bond into a little bit of a false sense of security, and he ends up getting trapped into a pond where there's a massive python that attacks Bond underwater. Bond, using a poison pen that he got from Dr. Goodhead earlier in the film, manages to kill the snake and then gets dragged out of the water by Jaws, who it's revealed survived going over the cliff in the scenes previous. Drax then goes and gives the villain monologue that all villains give, and locks Bond up with Dr. Goodhead, who's been held in sort of a cell cum conference room cum exhaust port for the Moonraker rockets. And the pair of them then manage to escape and sneak onto one of the other Moonraker rockets and fly out into space to Drax's space station, where he's planning to set his evil plan into motion. Once on the space station, Bond and Goodhead make sure that it's visible from Earth, as Drax has actually put in some defence software that means that it doesn't show up on any of Earth's radars or tracking systems to make sure that there was no interference. Now that the world can see it, the US immediately send up a team of Marines in a rocket to assist Bond and Goodhead. The big climactic battle ensues, and there's some fantastic visual effects in this scene. I think it actually won an Oscar for the visual effects, and I will give them credit where it's due. The use of like back projection and miniatures and the limited computer effects that they'll have been able to use for 1979. It does look absolutely fantastic, and when you watch it on Blu-ray now on I've got a fairly big screen behind me there, and it's all obviously re-rendered in high definition. It does look really, really good. So fair play to them. The battle ensues, and obviously Drax tries to sort of get away, not before wanting to set Jaws on Bond one last time to get him killed. Bond cleverly makes Jaws realise, however, that once Drax completes his master plan, that Jaws will no longer factor into the equation. Now this makes Jaws rethink, and actually sort of decide to switch sides and work with the Allies and with Bond. And he helps Bond, and then Bond and Drax have their sort of like final encounter, and they do the whole "it's one small step for man" sort of, they take the mick out of that sort of thing, and Bond blasts him out of the airlock. Bond and Goodhead then get into one of the Moonraker shuttles and make sure that they chase all of the orbs that have been sent out by Drax floating around the planet, and these are what contain the gas that's going to eradicate humanity. They managed to capture all of them. The last one, of course, is sort of a bit by the skin of the teeth sort of thing. They do it in the very last moment. We then have a really sort of cheesy ending, as we quite often get with the Roger Moore Bond films. The MI6 regulars and the US government are going to patch in the video feed from Bond and Goodhead's space shuttle, and they're going to send it to the White House and to Buckingham Palace and to Downing Street and all that sort of thing. And then, of course, when they do that, the cameras show Bond and Dr. Goodhead in the zero gravity environment having another intimate moment. Q gets one of the best lines of the series with the "I believe he's attempting re-entry, sir," and that's the plot of Moonraker. Now, this film is not one that I objectively enjoy very much. Subjectively, different story, but objectively, I think it's quite a poor film. But it's actually my girlfriend's favourite Bond film. So I'm going to cut now to a little bit of a discussion from me and her. She wanted to join me on this video, and we're just going to have a natter about our thoughts on it. Yeah. What was it about this film that you liked, Law?
So, up to this point, we've only really seen James Bond save another country. We've never seen him save the whole planet properly. And I just really like the fact that this one takes place in outer space, especially more in the third part of the film. The fact that we get to go to a space station, we get to go up in a rocket, and he saves the planet. I really like that they've taken that in a new direction.
It's certainly a new direction for the Bond franchise, yeah.
Definitely. The fact that Drax is planning to poison the whole planet with gas, and he has to stop him from doing that and save the whole world, not just a single country. I really like the fact they've changed that. I think that's an interesting new direction, definitely.
I think this is probably one of the things where me and you would disagree on this film, because I personally think that the first two acts, they're not great, are they? But they're your standard sort of Roger Moore era Bond sort of thriller, and they're sort of a bit by the numbers, really, aren't they? It's another Man with the Golden Gun, Spy Who Loved Me, For Your Eyes Only type sort of a globe-trotting, sort of meets with a few allies and a few villains along the way. But that third act, when they go to space, for me, is where I sort of almost come out of the film. And the fact as well that it was done, as I mentioned earlier in the video, a knee-jerk response to Star Wars coming out, I just find it a bit laughable. Fleming's original Moonraker novel is one of my favourites. And this obviously, besides keeping the characters of Bond and Hugo Drax, really does depart from it for me. But I can also see as well why it would be sort of considered a good fun popcorn movie, because when you take the Bond context out of it, it is quite a fun adventure movie. It's I use the phrase Sunday afternoon Bond a lot, which is something that I've borrowed from Calvin Dyson. Obviously the renowned Bond YouTuber, but this very much fits that category as well. You were saying to me before you liked Jaws in this one.
Yeah, when I was a lot younger, I watched Spy Who Loved Me and Moonraker, and Jaws really stuck out to me because he looks so much different to other Bond enemies. He's really tall, full with muscles and metal teeth as well, and he just really stuck out to me as someone really different. He did frighten me at first, but we see his arc sort of change in Moonraker. He becomes a bit softer, he gets a girlfriend, and his relationship with Bond changes. At first he's trying to kill him, but then he joins him at the end. When he figures out what Drax's proper plan is, he knows he's going to be double-crossed if he doesn't double-cross first as well. And I really like that, the fact that they've changed it, and the fact we get to hear him speak as well. His voice does not match his figure, I should mention. His voice does not match it at all. But no.
Yeah. Again, I think this is another thing that me and you would disagree on, Laura, is with Jaws, in The Spy Who Loved Me, he is, yes, he's slightly comedic, and it's the scene with the shark and him swimming away at the end, and the big magnet in Strongbird's lab lifting him up by his teeth, and there are silly moments in that, but I think they dial that up to 11 in Moonraker, and it's just sort of like he's played for laughs, and like, you know, there's a bit where he's in the airport and he just sort of flashes his teeth and goes to the guy on passport control, and the guy's just like, oh, and silly things like that. And you mentioned when we were watching the film the scene with Manuela in the alleyway. Like, he starts off looking creepy, but then all these guys dance through with a conga, and he gets caught up in that, and he just looks bloody silly.
I think that's why I like the fact they've taken a bit of the comedy factor to this film. There's a scene where he's in the cable car control room and he jams the motor and it keeps skipping as if it's going to restart, and he keeps looking at it like, don't you start again, don't move. And I just love the look on his face during that.
Well, it's like, you know, Holly Goodhead's like, do you know him? His name's Jaws. He kills people. Don't know him socially. And it's like, oh, mate, no. It's just all gets a little bit silly with Jaws in this one. I think they still could have kept him really quite creepy and terrifying, but still ultimately have him sort of form an uneasy alliance with Bond in the third act, and that could have worked a bit better. I really don't like the whole introduction of Dolly as his girlfriend. I think that's just a step too far. And, you know, it's like the double taking pigeon in the film, or the guy that's like, you know, looking at the wine bottle when he's sort of like, did I just see that gondola go past? It just all gets a bit silly. There are pockets in Moonraker of brilliance.
I think that's where you and I differ, though, because I do like the introduction of the comedy factor every now and then. Like, every time George and Bond see each other, Bond gives him just a polite smile, just to make him smile back, just to show his teeth. And I think that's just got to be pure Roger Moore humour, definitely.
I think that this is... Roger Moore's portrayal of Bond within this film is good. I think Roger Moore's still on his game for playing Bond, but I think this is a weaker film for him. And I think that it's a real shame that we didn't get a closer adaptation to the novel of Moonraker, purely because the producers wanted to do quite a lot more of what they'd done in the 70s already, which was cashing in on the you know, the cinema trends at the time, you know, the blaxploitation with Live and Let Die, and Man with the Golden Gun with the sort of the Hong Kong and the ninja martial arts sort of, you know, films like that. Even Spy Who Loved Me takes a little bit of inspiration from Jaws, the shark movie. You know, having that sort of submerged setting, and there's sharks used to kill people in it, and you know, again, they've just, Star Wars has come out, they've seen pound signs, and you know, I think that had they have waited to do Moonraker and done it more faithfully, it could have been a much stronger film. That being said, I do enjoy and can sit down and watch this one, but it does come out for me lower down in the ranking. I would give this film a 5.5 out of 10. Laura?
You see, I'm going to give this one an 8. Definitely 8 out of 10.
Well, there we go. So there you are, folks. That's been mine and guest Laura's thoughts on the 11th 007 film, 1979's Moonraker. What do you think of this film? Leave me a comment down below with your thoughts. I'd really love to have a natter about it. If you have liked this video and you like videos talking about the James Bond movies, talking about collecting physical media and just enjoying film in general, then please think about subscribing to my channel, because that is what I'm all about. And as we move further and further into 2021, these are the sorts of videos that I aim to bring you. So if that sounds like it's your cup of tea, then please think about hitting that subscribe button. And if you do, ring the notification bell, and then that way you're the first person to be notified whenever I do post a video. Now, above all else, folks, please take care of yourselves, and I look forward to seeing you again soon when we return in this series for a review of For Your Eyes Only.